Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this co-work and chat session. Today, we will be diving really deep into how to use AI in your content planning and your content creation. And we're the ultimate goal is to make sure we don't burn out as content creators, as creative people in general, no matter what platform we're posting on. So I'm gonna pause here, stop talking, and I'm gonna share the stage so that Iman can introduce herself.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me today on your live. I'm so excited. I haven't done a lot of live LinkedIn, which now makes me more motivated to try those as well, because it's an amazing platform to have these conversations. And so, as we said, today we're going to be talking a lot more about how to use AI to really plan your content ahead, get some structure around your content creation process, not just as an AI writing tool or a tool that generates the content, which is, I think, how a lot of people are using it these days, just as a copywriter or content generator. But there's a lot of tools out there that actually help you really streamline and centralize a scattered process, because ultimately, I think with content, consistency is key, right? So you don't want to just post every now and then. You want to be very sure about what your messaging is, how it aligns with your brand, and then create content around that, and then stay consistent. And the key to that is to always plan ahead. At least I have like a 2-week buffer where I'm always planning content ahead, so that, again, I don't scramble last minute to come up with ideas and then generate it. It just gets really overwhelming, and that's ultimately what causes burnout. So with the tool that I built called Vocable.ai, that was really what my struggle was. It's not necessarily creating the content. I consider myself a good writer. When it comes down to sitting down and actually creating the content, I don't struggle too much with that. I think for me, the biggest issue was the process before getting to the content creation, which is, how do I come up with the content ideas based on what my brand is about? How do I deep dive into each content idea and then give it like an actual description and a structure before I even create the content, right? So that's what we call a brief and content marketing. You're basically really fleshing out that idea a little bit more before you get to the creation process. And then how do I organize all of this in a way that helps me visualize my content ahead of time in a calendar, so that I know where the gaps are and what I need to fill, what kind of content I need to create more of, etc. And so that's ultimately how I went and approached Vocable.ai, more as a I would say project management meets ChatGPT, right? So it's not just about creating the content, but how do we organize it around my brand, around my content calendar, my frequency, the channels that I publish in, etc. And so I'm appreciative of you to have me on to talk a little bit more about this, because I know a lot of people struggle with this, and everybody's a content creator now, whether you're still in corporate world, whether you're building a coaching business, whether you're a fitness trainer. You have to put your content out there, because that is, again, how you attract opportunities, instead of being in that position of always chasing the opportunities.
Yeah, and in a world filled with media kits, people want proof as well. So if you're not creating that content and things, you don't have proof of the work that you do too. So 100% content is here to stay. Well, tell me a little bit about your background. Are you coming from that content creator space, or did you do content in the corporate space before stumbling upon creating Vocable?
Yeah, so I started off actually in communications and content marketing for the biotech world, because I went to school for biotech. And so I actually started off my career as a bioengineer and a scientist. And then when I moved to New York, I moved from the R&D side of biotech to the communication and marketing side of biotech, working for an agency. So I had to basically be part of a content marketing communication team of bigger pharma, biotech companies, to really help them translate their technology, their any new medication in a way that people understood it. So taking away the science part and then just making it relatable and translatable to the public. And so that's kind of where I started falling in love with the idea of using content and storytelling as a way to relate to audiences and target customers. Then I went on to launch my own content and publishing platform called 𝗀𝗃𝗃. It started off with a podcast, so I just randomly kind of started a podcast in 2015 around interviewing women that took an unconventional path to success. And so that kind of blew up at the time. It was #2 on iTunes, new and noteworthy, was voted voted in the top 5 best podcasts for women entrepreneurs. And because of that success, then I realized, okay, there needs to be a female-forward media platform that really focused on women's storytelling and helping women get their message and voices out and giving them a platform to create content that helps them market their brands. And so that's when I really dove into the world of content operations, which, you know, in order to create in bulk, in order to create a lot of content and also manage different contributors, different editors in the team, that's a whole operation that really that needed to be very tight and well-oiled machine in order to succeed. So that's when I started thinking process versus, you know, content. And I think when you get to a point as a brand or as a business where you need to produce content at scale, you no longer just need a tool to write you or to create the content for you. You need a whole process and a system in place in order to do that 10 times faster and more efficiently, but then without losing the consistent messaging across the board and across different channels. So I think that experience, you know, running a content publishing platform with different people involved was truly the reason why I even landed in the AI world, because at some point we hit kind of a growth spur where we wanted to scale our content operations, and we wanted to scale our offering and services to the members that created content on the platform, but we didn't really want to hire more editors, more writers on the team, because the overhead was getting a little crazy as a bootstrapped you know, company. So ultimately I started looking into how do we do this? How do we scale using technology? How do we scale by making the, you know, offering that we provide our members, which is content strategy, content writing, content, you know, brainstorming and planning. How do we make that self-serving using, you know, AI? And this was around 2019, so this was pre-ChatGPT, pre kind of AI being more mainstream. And so we were at the time looking at fine-tuning GPT-2, which wasn't as even great as what we have today. And again, so that this is kind of like how I started dabbling into this world. And, you know, I got lucky in that I got ahead of it before most people discovered the capabilities, and we kind of knew about these capabilities a long time ago. Luckily, we didn't launch Vocable before ChatGPT. I think had we launched it then, we would have probably gotten killed by ChatGPT, because at the time when we were experimenting with a lot of what was available in AI, you know, we were basically creating a version of ChatGPT, but just in a templated way. And so when ChatGPT came out, we were actually excited that the technology got that much more advanced, that we'd be able to build a product that's way beyond just a content generation, but rather really streamlines the whole process that we did for ourselves. So yeah, and then so fast forward to 2022, then I moved on from my last startup and launched Vocable as basically an experiment for myself to really see if I can use AI to streamline a lot of my own content struggles when I was running a content operations. And that's, again, why if you look at Vocable and the way it's built and the platform itself, it's very structured. It's really for people who are looking to scale their content, but without losing, again, efficiency, without losing too much time and having to prompt back and forth for one piece at a time. So it's really built for people who are trying to scale content, on-brand content, without losing that brand voice and consistency, and again have that structured environment that allows them to not burn out as they create more and more content for their brand.
Yeah, I feel like it's a very good tool for mature content creators. If you're just getting started, it's good to go in and play with it, but like if you are cranking out that content, you really do need operations behind everything you do. And I know a lot of people like to do the admin sides themselves, and I hate the admin side of creating. Like, I just like to create, so this is helpful.
Yeah.
All right, I think we can kick it off, and I'm gonna let you share your screen and walk us through the tool for someone who might be new to the tool. And I'll go ahead and drop in the link so people can get signed up and follow along with us too. But the floor is yours.
Thank you. So I'm gonna use our demo account here, and so that this is basically what the dashboard looks like. Obviously here I already have a content plan for our blogs that, I generated this demo this morning. And so when you come into the platform, your dashboard should look pretty empty. And then you basically have here under Contents Plan a button that says Generate New Contents Plan. So as a new user, you would have that CTA here. In this case, we'll go to my plan. Now, if you are a returning user and you have already created a lot of content before, you would see it all under your plan here. And then you can click on the plus button. You can create a new plan if you're adding a new brand to your account, or you can expand on your existing plan. And when we say plan, we basically mean like this, right? So this is a content calendar plan in a way for all of my March content. So you could see it as a Kanban view here where you can move things over, as you get your tasks and content creation done. You can also see it as a calendar view, for example, all here you could see some of the content I created. So once you start mapping out again your content, you're able to visualize it on your calendar. So for this demo then, we'll assume you're a new user, and then you're gonna click on create new plan, and this is what you would see typically. As a new user, you're being asked to create a website. I assume that most people who are creating content are creating it for their businesses or their brands, so they would have a website, and so that's why we made it a little bit easier for them to just scrape a lot of that information and use AI to analyze it. But again, if you don't have a website, you can just type it all in here manually. So in this case, we're going to assume we have a website. Let's just use Vocable as an example here. So you click Save and Continue. And so what it's doing here is that it's analyzing and scraping a lot of the information on your website about your brand. It's understanding your business. It's understanding who your target audience is, what you're offering, what your value proposition, any messaging, and it's pulling it all into this well-organized brand summary that it ultimately uses as context when creating content topics and content ideas for you, so that it's very specific to your brand, at least as much as possible. So again, it has the audience that you can, and everything is editable, right? So this is your human in the loop moment where you come in here and you're reviewing all that information. You always want to assume whatever AI tool you're using, AI is never 100% correct, that you always need your own input and human touch. So I typically go through, the messaging, anything of that sort. I add my thoughts to it. The more detailed and accurate this part is, the better your content output. And then it also comes up with a lot of the keywords and themes. So if you're writing for SEO purposes, then this is very important moving forward for any content ideas that are blog related. So let's say you go through it, you make your edits, and then you save and continue. And then the next step is your content topic. So based on everything that it scraped and that analysis, it comes up with some high-level content. I would even call these pillars rather than topics. So these are content pillars that your brand kind of falls under. So this is typically what you think if you're doing training for fitness, or if you're doing here, for example, AI tools. It comes up with some high-level pillars that you will start ideating around and add more details on topics around these specific pillars. Again, you can add more if you think it's missing. You can edit some of them. You can delete a few. This is your playground to make as many edits as possible. Always consider any draft or anything generated by AI your first draft. It's never the full thing, right? So don't be shy and, to edit and make as much changes here that will ultimately lead to more accurate content output. So once you go through your content pillars and you're happy with them, you save and continue. And this is where you pick your content that you typically create for your brand. And remember, for Vocable, just to, again, make sure that everybody's clear on that, it's fully text-based content only. So we don't create videos on the platform. You create scripts, you create posts and captions and long-form copy, but you don't create the actual graphic or other media type. That's coming hopefully soon, but it's not there just yet. And I know some people sometimes get confused when they see Instagram posts. They expect like a graphic or an image. It's more around ideating around the content and the copy here. So for us, I personally create a lot of LinkedIn posts and blog posts, and just to keep in mind, we are actually adding a lot more content types here in the next week. So we're adding Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts. We're separating the LinkedIn posts and articles. So right now, the LinkedIn post generates a full article for you. If you actually create content that long form on LinkedIn, it also creates the LinkedIn post at the bottom, so they're kind of together, but we'll be separating all the different types of content for every channel. So stay tuned for those. So let's say I picked LinkedIn post, blog post here, and now I generate my content plan. So it's a pretty simple step-by-step process that allows you to, again, create multiple content ideas mapped out in a very detailed brief, in a plan, so that you're not, again, scrambling for each post idea and prompting back and forth for each one. So this is where it starts generating all the content under your plan. You can continue adding more. Let's say you would like to add more, so it'll continue generating more briefs. But while it's generating more content, I'll just show you what a brief looks like. And so I know some people don't understand the concept of briefs because it's a very, I would say, industry, industry word or industry process driven step. But with briefs, it's really important to give, in general, AI as much detail as possible. Even when you're prompting on ChatGPT, you want to tell it exactly how you expect the content format to look like, what the bulk of the content, the core of the content should be, any specific messaging that you wanted to include, so that, again, you're not creating content that sounds just like everybody else or any other AI generated generic content. So that's why with Vocable, we really wanted to add an extra step between the idea and the full content copy, and that is brief, because brief is your time to give your AI as much details. And again, you can even add personalization here. So for example, you can even change the language if you want. You could say, write this in French, or you can use a description part to give your own anecdotes or personal insights that AI can, again, take in consideration when writing the content. So this is, again, where you probably want to spend the most time, because this is your key to personalizing any content output that comes next. So now we have quite enough, I would say, mix of blog posts and LinkedIn posts, let's say, for the next 2 weeks. And once I feel happy with the amount of content I got, then I click view content. And this is now where I create the plan and I land on my plan. And if you like to, I like to view it as a list, so I can keep going down and looking through each brief and then making my edits to each brief. Some people prefer the Kanban view. That way they can start moving things and they see their progress, right? So what's not been started yet, what content is in progress, what content is in review. And some people like to see it mapped out in their calendar view if they assign the deadlines already. So now once you're in your plan and you click through the briefs, you add your own personalization aspect to it, right? Then you start creating drafts just by clicking the button create draft. And this is, I think, what really makes it easy, because you can keep going down the line and just creating a bunch of drafts all at once in one click, as opposed to continuously prompting back and forth with ChatGPT, which I personally feel it's not very efficient when I have to prompt one post at a time, instead of just taking 10 minutes and just clicking, 10 different buttons, and all my content is created for me without me having to come up with the prompt for each one. And as you can see, a lot of the content on Vocable is very trained on content marketing best practices. So at least for me, I think the blogs that I get out of Vocable are a lot more in-depth and thorough than what I would get prompting ChatGPT. So, and that's because of how we fine-tuned our own AI to be very specific to the industry of content marketing. And so now I go through all of my content and then I just start drafting one by one. So then I have all my drafts created at once. And then let's say tomorrow, then I sit through for an hour and I just go through each draft and I edit it and add my own personal touch. And then I just now have it scheduled on my calendar to get published on a certain date. So this is what I call batch content creation process, where you're doing, like, now you just achieved, 10 times more content output in just a few minutes, right? As opposed to how you would do it with ChatGPT, where you would have to ideate and come up with the right prompt for that. Then you would have to take each idea and copy paste it maybe somewhere to save it on a spreadsheet or maybe Airtable, wherever you keep your content ideas. And then you come back to ChatGPT and then have to prompt it for each piece of content that you create. That's a very lengthy process and very inefficient, in my opinion. But with the way Vocable has been set up is to really make it easy for you to create a month's worth of content in almost one sitting without having to have the burnout of prompting back and forth and copying and pasting across different tools and then having a scattered structure around your process.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Here for any questions.
Yeah, that makes sense. I do have a question about the scheduling piece of it. So can people schedule to their favorite platforms directly from inside of here? Or is that something that's coming in the future?
So as of now, you can publish. So you can publish so the integrations we have are WordPress, Webflow, Wix, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter.
Okay.
So you can publish directly. And for your CMS, you can send it as a draft. So you can schedule it on your, WordPress, for example. But you can't schedule it just yet. That is something so when you integrate a channel, there's something at the bottom that says publish now or schedule. So that's what we're working on as a next step. So you're able to actually schedule it directly from here. So then on the day of, it just sends it directly to your Facebook, your LinkedIn, or your CMS, and then it gets published from there.
Okay, look, I'm obsessed. I'm like, ooh, ooh, how can I come in here and play with it a little bit more?
And there's also, I will also quickly add for people who like to create. I know we have, for example, a business on Vocable that has a huge online store of different products, and so they created about 3,000 product descriptions just using our template because it's so easy. It's a plug and play, right? So you put your product name, the features, and then boom, it creates it. So you're able to do it fast versus prompting back and forth again so there's a lot of templates that are available for people who are, again, just I would say not mature content creators that you mentioned, or content marketers that kind of create on demand. And we have different categories: press releases, ad copy, social media, email campaigns. So you don't have to always plan on Vocable ahead if you don't want to. If you want to just come in and create a document, then you can also just create new document and you can pick a template and then off you go to creating your content. You don't always have to have the planning process first. So it's very versatile for people who are planning ahead and for people who are also on demand and creating last minute content that just out of inspiration or out of need.
Ooh, I love that. And I know before we got on, I talked a lot about like job seekers. Like a lot of the people in my community are looking for jobs. So this would be a really interesting tool to play with, especially your templates, like the case studies, or even like a normal LinkedIn post or something would be really interesting to play with if you are a job seeker and want to show your thought leadership on LinkedIn or another website. So this is really cool. I love it. And I love that you broke everything down for us. What are some of the things that you're excited about that might be coming to the tool? It's not released yet, but you're excited to get people using it and get them in the tool using that specific feature.
Yeah, so I think one of the things I'm excited about is we're always improving our AI. So I think we kind of talked off camera on this earlier. We are fine-tuning our AI a little bit more to focus on viral hooks and viral storytelling angles, and that way you're able to really create and ideate content that is really at the highest level of resonance with audiences. Because we've looked at a lot of trends when it comes to content that performs now the most, whether it's AI generated or human generated, and a lot of it is very much focused on hooks and storytelling. So we definitely want to help our users create more of that content that performs best, while also infusing their own brand and anecdotes to the mix. So for that, we want to add to the brand training where you're able to upload any past, material, any customer testimonials. You can upload past content or different samples that you feel really capture your expertise, your story, your voice, and that will be now added as kind of a layer of context to your AI to take in consideration so that your content is always on brand and doesn't feel generic as if you create one on ChatGPT. And I think to your point earlier, a lot of people do struggle with the personalization aspect on ChatGPT, because I know a lot of people are like, can I just use ChatGPT? I'm like, yeah, you can. But again, it depends on what your needs are. If your needs are scalability and personalization, a lot of people aren't really patient enough to really create those GPTs, like for a GPT for LinkedIn, a GPT for blog, a GPT for, and that has very much captured your brand voice. And they're kind of looking for tools like this that make that process a lot easier and more intuitive. And so ultimately, that's how we are approaching the improvements and upgrades of Vocable, is how do we make it more personalized to your brand? How do we really give you that feeling that you trained your AI on your own voice and on your own expertise and experience? And then how do we make the process of scaling that content that's on brand and stays consistent very intuitive and easy for you, so you don't have to create 20 different GPTs and go through the motions of figuring out the custom instructions and the right prompts. It's very time consuming, especially if you're trying to save time, not add more to your burnout. And so I think tools like Vocable make it a lot easier to navigate that, and while also using AI to your benefit.
Yeah, that's true. And so there's a trend of people creating newsletters. Is there something in here, like a template or a way that they can start to develop their newsletters at scale if they wanted to? There you go. I see email campaigns.
Yeah, so there's campaigns here. This is a lot for people who are, have sequences that they need to set up for, like cold email sequences, onboarding emails. But there's also a newsletter. So if you want to create, and that's going to be part of what we add again, and when you expand your plan. So there's going to be here newsletters. So that way, if you want to create just like, let's say 10 newsletters for the next month, then you can just click on newsletter. It'll create that for you as a content plan. And you can also, if you want to, let's say today I decided I want to create a newsletter that I want to send. Then you can add a brief. So basically adding a brief on Vocable is like ideating a new post, ideating a new content type. Then you can pick here email newsletter. And then, let's say I'm writing about the future of AI is agentic. Then I pick my target audience. For this is education. It kind of pulls up some high level keywords that I think would be interesting. Actually, autonomous AI system would be great. And then you continue. It'll come up with some ideas here that you can pick from as far as like the angle or whatnot.
Okay.
Let's say autonomous AI system. This is interesting. And then it generates your brief for you. And so what it does is then adds it to your content plan. And then from there on, you can just create. Again, this is where you add your personalization part and any insights or instructions you want the content piece to have. You add to your plan, and now you have an email newsletter that you can create and draft.
Perfect. All right. This is fun. I like it.
Yeah. There's a lot to play with when people feel comfortable. There's definitely, at first I'm like, we've created too much on the platform almost, that sometimes it might be overwhelming. But then again, I think when people do get comfortable with it and they play around with it, then they feel like there's a lot of value that it brings, because it makes so much of the back and forth AI, conversation easier and more intuitive. So you're able to do more, but with less.
Yeah, that makes sense. And if you are someone who's trying to show up in multiple places, this is really useful. Or even if you have a team and you have to onboard people to help you out, this is useful for them too, because it's already tailored to your voice. You don't have to walk them through. And essentially, this becomes your ghostwriter. So yes, I'm
curious how you found it. Like when you first used the platform? How did it feel for you? What was kind of like your, aha moment? Like, this is something I could definitely use.
Yeah. So when I first used it, I used my website. So I used 𝗴𝗺𝗺𝗲.com, and my 𝗴𝗺𝗺𝗵𝗆 website has been up for years. So it has a lot of content. And actually, based on the things that it drew out, I was like, ooh, I need to go and update some of the keywords on my website because my audience changed a little bit. So I was able to add in my target audience and more of my content that I talk about now. And then I generated it, and then it generated my Instagram posts, my LinkedIn posts, topics. And I dove into the briefs a lot. So that is what I was using to figure out how I wanted to show up on LinkedIn, because that's my main platform. But I liked it a lot. I was like, wait, I didn't even think to turn that into a quiz. And in the brief window, you can change how you want certain topics to show up too. So I was like, maybe this would be better as a quiz or as a newsletter instead of an Instagram post. So that is how I was playing around with it. But I like it a lot. I think it's a really cool tool. And I keep stressing to job seekers. I'm like, job seekers, please use tools like this because you want to show up in new ways. So like, why not just use a tool like Vocable to figure out what to talk about? Especially if you're like a portfolio or something, drop your portfolio link in there, get some content ideas to talk about, and start showing up in a new way. So yeah, that's how I used it. I'm like, how can I show up in new ways? What are some new topics that I might not have thought about talking about? And that is how I've used it. Now I tend to try to write my own content. So I didn't get as far as the plan window. But now that I see the plan window, I'm like, my ghostwriter, I need a ghostwriter.
Yeah, it's a great first draft. I mean, it does a good job putting together the first draft that you need to then build up on it. Like, I also love to write on my own. I'm very good at, I think that writing for me and copywriting is therapeutic, but I will say that having that first draft is very helpful to jump right into the parts that I know I can do better on instead of starting from scratch. So, and I always tell people, like, when you use tools like this, I won't even sit here and be like, yeah, the content part of it that it generates is the best part, because for me, I think whatever AI tool you're talking about, it's not really what I seek AI for. It's really about like streamlining a process. And like you said, it gave me a lot of ideas I didn't have before. It also gave me a chance to think, oh, I didn't think about a quiz. Maybe I should turn this into a quiz. So this is good because this is how you want to use AI to be able to brainstorm different ways of creating content and showing up online, and also having a structured way to help you navigate and execute on that vision, right? And then the content output should be kind of, okay, this is bonus, but I know that that's the part I need to show up in and actually add my own, human touch to. So I agree with you on that. I relate to that.
Yeah, I love that. And for people who are listening, who are new to content planning, I've recently started having themes. So every month I'll try to center my content around specific themes or high level ideas. And I so see this as a way of making that 10 times easier. Like, yes, if you create a new plan, yes, there you go. There you go.
Brand, right? And then you can give it, like, let's say this month I am focused on blah, blah, blah. And you gave it that, right? You pick your theme. You pick how many, and then this is where your themes go, right? So content topics could be your theme. So if you just want one theme, then you leave one, and then you just really elaborate on it here. Or you can add different sub-themes to it as well. And then based on that, it will create content just around that theme for that specific month. And then you can focus on, going through that and executing on it.
I love it. Yes. I know I mentioned before we hopped on that, like, I literally wrote this in my phone. I need a tool that will help me figure out what to write on every type of platform. And then, the internet did its thing, and then your tool was presented to me. So.
Ask and it's given, right?
Yes.
It's given.
I love it. All right. So for anybody else who is trying to get started, or they're scared to dive in and create content, do you have any last minute advice for them? that'll make it a little bit less scary to start showing up online and creating content, especially with your tool. It makes it so super easy.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, not to add another shameless plug, but I do think we also built it, right? We built it for people who are very experienced with content and are very process driven, but we've also made it easy to use because it's just a lot of pointing and clicking, and it's very obvious step by step what you need to do, right? You don't have to figure out a lot of things. There's not a lot of prompting. There's not a parts where you have to come up with the strategy. We do all of that for you, and we just give you that in a platter for you to play with, and you can change it as you see fit, right? So we give you even the brand description, so you can, that's a good exercise for people who haven't really done that before, right? So being able to actually sit down during, you know, your content planning and go to your brand, and let's say you look at it, and then I got to figure out, is my brand description right? What is my core messaging? Who is my audience? What is my value proposition? This is also a good exercise for people in general, you know, AI or not, to go through when you're first starting with your content, because you want to make sure that the content you create is also aligned what your brand offers, what your services are, who your audience is, right? So you can't create content unless you know all of this. And so we make it almost easier to extract a lot of that initial initial description from your website if you have one. If not, then you have the opportunity to go do this manually, because it's also going to help you in the long term. And then after that, then you come up with kind of your content topics, and it really also is built to walk you through this exercise of putting a system in place to make that content creation a lot less, you know, scary and intimidating. It's very well organized, very intuitive, color coded. It's, you know, everything is named and labeled, and then also gives you this kind of choice of, okay, here are all the content types you can be creating. Don't choose all of them if you're getting started. I will say that. Pick one. Maybe at the beginning you just want to really show up on LinkedIn and show up in a way that like helps build your brand, your thought leadership, your expertise. Then at that point you just use Vocable and really plan ahead with LinkedIn and come up with content there, ideate around it, get very thorough with your briefs, right? So that's where you add your own personalization, your own insights and stories, and then get familiar with the process using LinkedIn. And then once you feel like you've really mastered that process with LinkedIn, then you can add, you know, blog posts. If you want to really rank higher on, search engines and drive traffic to your website, I recommend blog is always going to be very helpful to drive traffic organically in the long term. If you're really good with cameras, right, and videos, or even have a way of creating faceless videos, then I would recommend then you move on to YouTube scripts, right, and then just focus on that channel on top of LinkedIn. So it's a very intuitive way of getting started, even if you have zero experience with content creation.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, well, we will close this session out. I hope the people watching, whether you're watching live or you're tuning in on the rebroadcast, I hope you got some gems and you're going to start showing up and not being too nervous to show up to create content. But I'm so excited. If you're watching this video, please leave comments below, questions if you have them, if you didn't get to ask them live. We'll be checking back in to see what everybody thinks about the tool, but I'm so excited for y'all to use it. And thank you, Iman, for your time and walking us through this wonderful tool.
Yeah. And if anybody has any questions or requests on a specific way of using the platform or tutorial, if you want to send it, over or leave it on the comment, then we're happy to do another live and go through specific use cases. I love kind of showing people to use it in different ways. So if you have a specific request, let me know, and we'll definitely be able to jump back on and show you how to walk through it.
Perfect. All right, everyone. Thank you so much again, and see you next time. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.